my name is Alex, and you're listening to Sagar Stance Podcast, where I give my Sagar stance on anything and everything stand-up paddleboarding, as well as personal and lifestyle. I am once again filming at night. It is currently 8:48, aka 12 minutes before my bedtime, but man, whatever, it's fine. I have to prioritize the podcast. I can sacrifice going to bed a few minutes later than normal. I also did notice that last episode that I also filmed at night, I sounded really tired, and while obviously I am going to sound a little bit tired, that definitely shouldn't be a common thing in the next several episodes while I am filming at night. If you don't know why I'm filming at night, it's because in the morning the cicadas are so bad, and then once afternoon hits, I am busy and I'm doing things, so I can't really film. But anyways, let's get into the topic. I really want to talk about a topic. This is a very chronically online topic. It does not necessarily relate to paddling. It doesn't necessarily relate to people that are watching the podcast, and in general it is more like a Western issue, like the United States, all that stuff. But either way, maybe you can take something from it and you can learn something new about what's happening in the world right now, and that is a topic of underconsumption-core. It is the new craze going on the internet, aka TikTok and Instagram, and I just wanted to talk about underconsumption-core, how it started, what it is, and why it is so stupid, why I personally think it is very stupid. So I want to do the whole shebang. I want to give a full rundown of what this is. So let's first off talk about the background. In my case, I personally like to dip my toes into environmental sustainability and conscious consumption. I personally am on the way towards minimalism, and when you think about minimalism, it's essentially learning to live with less. And if you were to look at my podcast episodes and look at the stuff behind me, you'd probably think, Alex, you're not being a minimalist. And for some people in the community, they might think the same. But here's my 2 cents about being a minimalist, and this is a little bit of a side tangent. Minimalism isn't about having as little things as possible. It's about filling your life with meaningful and purposeful items. Also, minimalism isn't super cookie cutter. It's very subjective, and everyone has their own ways of doing it. In my case, I've just recently, in the past several months, been practicing this. Now, I have generally practiced it in the past 2 years, but it was mainly in my day-to-day life. But when I would actually go travel, I would not follow it. Specifically when I would go to the United States, and when we needed to buy stuff, I was always like, oh my god, we're in the United States, I have to just get everything. But now I've kind of calmed down, I've kind of come to my senses, and now I am practicing minimalism in all aspects of my life, or I'm working towards it. Obviously, I make mistakes. I'm not going to call myself perfect. I definitely make mistakes, and I also still have so many things from my life that I've had for so long, and I'm not going to get rid of it just because I don't like it anymore. There's definitely things in my space that current Alex would not buy. Just because I wouldn't buy it right now, it doesn't mean that I'm not going to give the life that item deserves. I'm going to love those items, and I'm going to use them until I no longer can, and before I discard them, I'm going to try to figure out whether or not I can reuse them. And I'm going to be referring to a podcast episode that I did a while back about making lifelong commitments to our items, and this kind of ties in to that topic as well. So I'd really recommend you go look at that episode as well, because it talks about essentially committing your life to your items, because that's the least that we can do for bringing those items into our lives that will ultimately live longer lives than us. But anyways, yeah, whenever I bring something into my life recently, I make sure that I 100% am ready to bring that into my life, and I'm ready to commit my time and my energy and my priority to that item, which is also why I personally really hate gifts or gifts. If I don't know, guys, I've been struggling to say jewelry. There was an episode, I'm filming a YouTube video about this topic. I'm filming a YouTube video where I talk about 50 plus ways that I quote unquote underconsume in my life. And a lot of it has to do with jewelry. And I think I mispronounced the word jewelry several times during that episode. It's so embarrassing. But anyways, yeah, I hate receiving gifts because I have no idea what that item is, and I don't know whether or not I'm going to be able to love it to the point where it's worth existing for me. If you're ever looking to buy me a gift, just give me money. Please and thank you. And I also really hate clutter, so I try to minimize that as much as possible, and that kind of means just owning less and not owning that many things. I also do live in a place where it is hard to get really good quality things and items that actually last, specifically clothes. And I used to beat myself up about buying fast fashion and buying cheap items, but I now understand that it is okay to buy those cheap items as long as you are buying them responsibly and you are willing to commit yourself to that item. And I also pay attention to how my consumerism affects the environment. I really prioritize reusable items for my day-to-day life, and when I no longer need something, I try to figure out a way that I can reuse it before ultimately discarding it. And also, my parents taught me so much about prioritizing experiences and actions rather than material objects. They taught me how to make things last and opt for reusable items. They've taught me so much, and I cannot thank them enough for that. So what I'm trying to say that everything that I've done, everything that I am actively working on in improving my life and improving the way that I myself live on this earth came way before Underconsumption-core and that whole thing. So now I want to go into the history of Underconsumption-core and how it has arisen. And now we're getting into like the real chronically online stuff. There's very few things that I pay attention to on the internet, but this is a topic that I've been listening to and paying attention to for months, and this is finally happening, and I'm like, whoa, it's so weird to see the shifts in media and how people live their lives. So yeah, this is a topic that I've been following for a really long time because, like I said before, I'm actively trying to figure out how to underconsume and how to consume less and how to be more meaningful with the things that I purchase. So yeah, I followed this topic really closely. So yeah, I followed the topic of overconsumption really closely, and I also like to hear about how other people overconsume and underconsume, just so I am very aware of ways that I can step out of the line by accident and ways that I can cut back in my life. But anyways, let's talk about the history of Underconsumption-core. So Underconsumption-core, as you can kind of tell, it is a trend. Core is usually used for clothing aesthetics. There's cottage core. Honestly, that's the only one I can think about right now. But anyways, you understand what I'm saying, okay? Something core is very chronically online vocabulary. So trends in general, they come in and out of style. That's why they are called trends. And this includes clothing, this includes body types, which is also very stupid. And it also includes many other things. And it's a really common thing for trends to happen, that they're doing something, they do it for who knows how long, and then people decide to not follow that trend and they decide to do the opposite of what the trend is, essentially, just to kind of separate themselves from the trend. And then ultimately people will then switch to the other extreme, and it's essentially going extreme to extreme. I've seen this a lot and I've heard about it a lot. When it comes to makeup, a big thing is when it comes to makeup, back in the day when YouTube makeup influencers were a really big thing, it was really common to have the whole thing, you were decked out in foundation, mascara, concealer, bronzer, eyeliner, highlighter, all that stuff. Your brows were just beautifully crafted and penciled in. And now recently, especially with COVID, it's been really normalized to wear more natural makeup and not looking all glammed up. People have been going from extreme to extreme. Another example was back in the 2010s when being super skinny was really popular in Western culture, and then because of the Kardashians, being more thick and more curvy became really trendy, and now people are going back to super skinny as the ideal body type. There's things that are constantly changing. And so this kind of showed up when it came to consumption, and that in the 2010s, minimalism was a really big thing. And being eco-friendly was a really big thing. And so people were showing their minimalistic house with absolutely no color and only neutrals and all that stuff. And so when minimalism kind of went out of style or out of trend, it went from one extreme to another, and that came maximalism. And maximalism is essentially just filling your life with so many things. I honestly love maximalist decor, room decor and house decor. It's really fun. It's really beautiful. I personally wouldn't do it, but it's super fun. I really like it. But we saw that transition from one extreme to another. We saw the transition from minimalism to maximalism. And so now currently, maximalism has transitioned into more of overconsumption. And there's also this thing where now that so many things are accessible online, trends are happening so much faster and at such a quicker rate than they did several years ago. A trend like back in the day would last like 10 years, like a whole last decade, and now they last maybe like 2 weeks. They're called like micro trends. And so there's also a lot of talk about Underconsumption-core possibly being a micro trend, which we're going to get to in a second. So yeah, like I said, maximalism has kind of transitioned into overconsumption. So what is overconsumption? Overconsumption is, you guessed it, overconsuming on items. On the internet, you may see this as having a lot of makeup, having a lot of skincare, and like the craze that happened earlier this year, like having a ton of Stanley cups. And there are people that overconsume and they make content out of this overconsumption. Their job is essentially to make you feel like you need to buy the item, make you feel like you desperately need this item to make money off of you. These products are usually promoted via their affiliate links, and affiliate links are essentially, if you purchase that item through that person's link, they will get money off of your order. Like, they will earn money for every order that you make using one of their links. They're called affiliate links. So their whole point, their whole thing on the internet is to influence you to buy items so that they will earn money off of the items that you purchase through them. So it gets to the point where these people, and there are several people doing this, where you just get filled with videos on your feed of people trying to sell you items. And this can be anything from like makeup items to skincare items, like I mentioned before, but there's also random gadgets, random Amazon gadgets that you didn't know you needed. All that stuff, all those things are to get you to buy stuff through their affiliate links so that they can make money. And there are also a lot of people who are prominent influencers that promote items as like, oh, must-haves. Oh my god, you have to have this. This is my go-to. But what their viewers don't know is that they were given that item for free. And a lot of these things are really expensive. So when this influencer who received the item for free is telling their viewers like, oh my god, you have to buy this, you have to buy this, they are then influencing their viewers to buy something expensive, to drop money on this thing that supposedly will be the best thing they would have purchased in their life. Editing Alex here. When I say gifted, I mean products directly gifted from that brand. A lot of influencers receive PR, which is essentially brands just sending you products in the hopes that you'll talk about them. So a lot of these people receive these products for free and then talk about them as if it's the best thing they've ever received, but the people that watch them don't know is that they probably received it as a gift and spent absolutely no money on that product. So yeah, when I mean being gifted, I mean gifted directly from the brand. And this creates a really false illusion because also these influencers have an incentive to talk nicely about these products because they were gifted it. So it creates this bias and dishonesty from the influencer, and then all of a sudden their viewers are dropping hundreds of dollars on an item that they got for free. So when you are watching someone promote an item, you have to be aware of the situation, like be aware of what's happening in the video. Consider your biases and their biases. Maybe even look in the caption to see if there's like hashtag ad or something so you can see whether or not they are incentivized to talk nicely about this product. And I want you to really consider whether or not this thing will make your life better or if it really is going to solve a problem that you didn't know you had until you saw the video. So all of that to say, a lot of people are becoming more aware of these issues with the gifted products, the affiliate links, all these things, all the biases. And people are just tired of constantly being pushed to buy things. And I get tired of it too. It's so annoying just wanting to go through Instagram, just wanting to go through TikTok, and every other video is a sponsored ad or someone trying to make you buy something. It's just so annoying. I just want to watch my TikTok in peace, guys. And so yeah, a lot of people are getting tired of being sold items to. So there's this big uproar that's coming up in against influencer culture, and that is Underconsumption-core. So, what is underconsumption-core? Like I said, underconsumption-core is a trend that's happening at the moment that is directly going against influencer culture. It is essentially people sharing parts of their lives that aren't aesthetically pleasing, parts of their life where they only have one item and really only need one item. They're showing their old shoes, their one water bottle, their small amount of makeup and skincare. And it is also really nice to see people online with realistic lives, because an influencer life is so incredibly unrealistic. They have those items to show off, to create an illusion of like, oh my god, this life could be yours. But it is so unrealistic and it is so expensive to reach that. So seeing people live normally, they don't have 5,000 shoes, they have 2 or 3 that work perfectly fine. They don't have all this skincare. No, they just have what works, and that's okay, and that's good enough for them. They don't need more. It's so refreshing seeing people show that part of their lives on the internet, because normally the algorithm doesn't like seeing that because it's unaesthetically pleasing and just not favorable for the algorithm. So while it is refreshing to see a lot of people online talk about their underconsumption and just to kind of get an idea of what the average person lives like, there has been a little bit of backlash on this trend. And essentially there's 3 points that I've picked up that I've noticed that there's backlash. Number 1 is that for many people it is not a trend, it is a lifestyle. Number 2 is that many people underconsume or don't overconsume simply because they cannot afford it. They are not in the financial situation to be able to afford to overconsume. And 3, people are essentially just turning everything into trends now. I want to talk about point number 1 and point number 2 together. Point number 1, it's not a trend, it's a lifestyle. And number 2, a lot of people underconsume just because they can't afford anything more. Overconsumption in general is a very first world problem. Like, boo-hoo, you can't buy in excess. And there's been a lot of videos online about people talking about their underconsumption and filming little videos of ways they underconsume, but like in the background of the video, you see like dozens of things that are just completely unnecessary. There was one video of a girl that I saw where she showed like the one bag she uses, the one pair of shoes she uses, but in the background it's a whole rack of other shoes. Behind the bag there's a ton of other bags, and in the caption she wrote like, oh, I have so many things, these are the only ones that I use. And I'm like, that's not underconsumption. You still bought all these things, so what, you only use one of those things? That's not underconsumption. Editing Alex here again. Since I filmed this podcast episode, a few more things have come out about this trend, and I am going to talk about it. I'm going to jump in and out throughout the rest of the episode. But this video that I was talking about specifically, it has since come out that it was satire. And so what is happening now is that people are essentially making fun of the fact that people are buying less by showing the ways that they overconsume. And it is so weird, because why would you make fun of people for buying less? But there's also this thing that it's like, because it's a trend, people are now starting to follow it and are starting to act like they underconsume. So people are essentially making fun of the people that are faking it just because they want to fit in with the trend. And also, a lot of people on the internet don't really find turning people's financial situations into a trend just to be cute and quirky, which it also leads to my third point, in that people are just turning everything into a trend. Why does it have to be a trend, guys? Why? Many people don't like the fact that underconsumption is a trend, the fact that they are turning underconsumption into underconsumption-core, when we all know that trends nowadays last like 2 to 3 weeks tops. So what's going to happen is that people are going to be aware of it for a few weeks, maybe a few months, and before we know it, another thing is going to show up and it's going to take priority, and people are going to continue to consume as they were doing before underconsumption-core ever came along. Also, it is starting to happen where people are starting to sell products based on underconsumption-core. There's videos showing up of people like, oh, you don't need all these things. You don't need to buy in excess when this one product can do everything for you. Can we just talk about the irony of that? The fact that you're never going to stop being sold stuff. There's people that are trying to sell you things based on this underconsumption trend, when the whole point of the trend is to underconsume, and yet people following it, they're going to convince themselves that they need this one product and they can get rid of everything else. And also, I talked about a little bit more that I learned a little bit more about this topic since I filmed the episode. And I learned more about the minimalism trend back in the day. I talked about this earlier in the episode. The minimalism trend came with a certain aesthetic, and that was a lot of neutrals. So essentially what a lot of people did to become quote unquote minimalists and have the look was to get rid of the things that they already own and replace them with neutral minimalist items. And does that not defeat the entire purpose? It just baffles me how everyone's like, oh, I want to hop on this trend. Oh, but I need this product to be able to do it. Like, no. You don't. The whole point of underconsumption, the whole point of minimalism is to learn to accept and to appreciate what you already have, and to just be conscious of what you're bringing into your life. Oh my God. And this is where it personally irritates me. I know we're finally getting to the part where I say that it's stupid. It really irritates me because there's no actual change happening. It is a trend, and trends, I keep on saying this, but Underconsumption-core is very clearly a trend, and trends are meant to be followed for a small period of time, and then people go to the next thing. It's just how the trend cycle works. So I promise you that the people on TikTok who are talking about like, oh, I want to start to underconsume, I'm not going to overconsume anymore, I swear to God, in the next few weeks, they're going to like go on a shopping spree and you're going to see it on their TikTok. There is no actual internal change happening. Underconsumption is not a trend. It is a commitment to saving money, to living more sustainably, and to live with a greater purpose, detaching yourself and your worth to material belongings and directing your attention and energy to more meaningful, intangible things. It's not a trend, it's a lifestyle. So if you are still listening to this, I do want to say one last thing. Whenever you are thinking of buying something, I want you to seriously consider what you are bringing into your life, and if it really holds any value, consider its life outside of your own. Everything comes down to whether or not you will buy that item. Think about how much energy it took to make that item, to put it on the shelves, and then consider how meaningful it will be in your life and whether or not that worth is worth it for that item to stay on this planet, on this earth, well past your own lifetime. So yeah, tangent over. Thank you guys so much for listening to me rant about this topic. It is a topic that I am seriously very interested in. I talked about it at the beginning of the episode. It just makes me so annoyed that people consider these lifestyle choices as a trend, when I know damn well those same people on TikTok are going to continue to live as they were before Underconsumption-core ever came along. There has to be change, guys. We have to learn to prioritize bringing really meaningful items into our life and considering what that means in the grand scheme of things. But anyways, thank you so much for listening. Thank you for listening to my chronically online girl talk. Make sure to rate the podcast. And you can listen to the podcast on any platform where you listen to podcasts. I'm finally going to be more active on posting on my Instagram. I haven't really posted an actual post in like 2 months, but I posted recently and I got really, really good attention, and I'm so happy it got picked up by Twiddle Sup, which everyone wants that. At least I do, because I get like 20 followers every time Twiddle Sup reposts me. Anyways, thank you so much for listening or watching, and I will catch you guys later. Adios!